and your kind observations about myself and my students. I've been accused of inviting people to come to Bihar, and then they get hooked, so to speak. And 10 years later, I hear about it at international conferences. But I'm sure that Fred Damon is not going to do that to me 10 years from now. So, but Professor Damon has been fascinated by the encounter that we had that was similar to this at the University of Virginia about 6 months ago. And it is at his initiative, and because of his intellectual sensitivities that he has taken the opportunity to be here, which I appreciate enormously. But I do have a comment or two or three to make that I've been randomly putting back in my mind, and I don't know exactly where to start, and I'm not going to take more than a couple minutes. 2.5 minutes is defined by my friend Nirmal Singh, may be here. But obviously, research agendas are tricky and complex things because we're all individuals, and whether we're activists or semi-activists or committed or uncommitted or curious about the human condition wherever we try to understand it, because that's not why you're here. I want to make 2 or 3 suggestions, and I'm going to start with what I, as a historian, think is one of the really critical issues about how we understand a place. And for those of us who are historians, and there are many of you who are not historians who've done the same thing, we need to have data, okay? And for historians, we do our ethnographic field work either in what anthropologists call deep field, or we do it in archives, or we do it in newspaper offices, or we do it in other places. And I know there's at least one editor of one of Putnam's English language newspapers here, Mr. Naidu. And what? There are more. More than one. Okay, fine. Well, I'm sure there are, and the message is the same to all of you. Your newspapers are a critical source, not only for what's happening yesterday and today, but what happened 50 years ago and 40 years ago and 10 years ago. And the reason that note is on my pad is because Professor Puchapadas from Paris and I were talking on the coach coming here this morning about our respective researches 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. And there was some remarkable similarity because the newspaper that Mr. Naidu edits is now housed in the same building that Searchlight was in for many years. You all know it's a report newspaper, and many of us have spent long hours poring over that newspaper, as we have other newspapers. And unfortunately, a number of things have happened. Either they've not been well kept, or the libraries haven't kept them, or people have clipped what they wanted out of them. And what I want to urge the editors of the newspapers who are the editors of the newspapers represented here today, those of you who deal with it know more about it than I do, how the money that the prominent cardiac surgeons put back into this economy in places like Patna or places like Pune. I'm going to make 2 other points, and then I'm going to stop. As I say, we could go on endlessly, but the main thing is to get our intellectual juices flowing in some creative way, and all of us could list 10 things that we think are really urgent to do. I'll mention some of my former graduate students, and the reason some of them, not all of them, ended up doing things on Bihar is because the first thing they did after they had done some basic reading in a colloquium was to go to the University of Virginia Library, get the man's degree in reading settlement reports and district gazetteers and census documents, and by some strange coincidence, most of those happen to be in Bihar. But never mind, it produced some interesting scholarship. But that doesn't mean that we've done it all. As we learned from Nirmal Dasgupta yesterday, there's this place called Gaya, and I never been to my head in the direction of Gaya, but he came to Putnam and found us such an in the library, and he thought that was more comfortable than the Gaya district record, so he stayed there. But there are endless places of enormous social, political, cultural fascination that are yet to be studied in this place, and I want to encourage you, obviously, all of you who are directing students to do what Arvind is trying to encourage at this conference, which is to send them to places like Gaya. But what I'm just enormously impressed with what I've heard Kalpana and Bela and many others of you who are at the front end of your academic careers doing in the way of ethnographic field work as social scientists, historians, political scientists, political economists, and what have you. So I think this has been very fruitful in making exposing us to that fact. The last thing I want to say, two last things I want to say. I want us to, as academics and as activists and as I say, the whole range of those of us who are represented here, to be concerned with the fact that we think of ourselves as social scientists. That's fine. But when I hear Arvind talking about bioethical issues, I see Arvind moving in a broader range of intellectual interest and inquiry that I think is the direction we need to go. We don't need to worry about disciplinary boundaries. And I was impressed with that fact when Catherine talked yesterday or the day before about her work. There is an intimate connection between the social experience and the political experience and the cultural experience and the religious experience. And those are arenas that are just as significant to our understanding of this place and this space in very complex in the very complex terms that we must do it. Well, I keep coming across new things on my sheet, so don't shy away from the vernacular things. Many of you in this room are Indian, so you don't have any problem not shying away from the vernacular stuff. But don't worry about the official record. Any record is an important record. Go to it, and that brings me to my last point, which is that apart from newspapers, which are important sources, ADRI, I think, has an opportunity in this state to do important work in uncovering other sources and protecting other sources which are out there in this climate deteriorating, and we want to do everything to put it on microfilm or to put it on electronic preservation devices, so that stuff that's in the district record rooms of the state, for example, doesn't die. Some of it is dying. I saw it dying 25 years ago, and I haven't been there very recently, but there are many, many opportunities, and I want to thank Arvind Das and Adri and Dr. Koch and Shabal and Katinka and all of you for what I think has been an enormously fruitful intellectual human engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. I could say, as a historian, would be more in the way of a general statement or recommendation. One thing all historians know is that crisis situations are probably the best moments in time to understand how a society works. Of course, they are terrible periods for the population concerned, but at least they have one advantage, which is that they possibly provide the opportunity to go deeper in the understanding of the society concerned than periods where life just goes on. And I think we can say that after the 4 days of work which we've had, that Bihar is a situation of crisis, although there are, as many participants have shown, reasons to hope. Now, the recommendations I think we should have in mind while going on with our studies is that for a real understanding of what goes on, the historical dimension should always be kept in mind. We've had on many occasions during these last few days questions regarding the extent to which what was going on now, what is going on now, was similar or not to what had happened in the past. And we have had at several moments some difficulty in deciding whether things had changed or not. And I think that this historical dimension is absolutely vital on all the subjects that had been mentioned as desirable subjects of study until now. And the other dimension, which obviously has to be kept within our perspective, is, as Fred Damon has said, the comparative dimension. I think probably much could be brought into our understanding of the contemporary situation from a study of what is going on in similar on similar subjects in other parts of India or elsewhere. And this comparative dimension is a very difficult type of method to carry on, but I think it is amply worth the while. Now, after having said that I have no particular topic to recommend, I will now recommend one, and that is the type of research which Catherine has been carrying on. I think that the study of popular culture is not only precious as simply an object of beauty, but also because it provides on all types of situations an understanding of what is going on, which of course there is no other way to get, and that which in any case the study of documents and other kinds of materials produced by the literate sections of society cannot provide. Now a last consideration regarding more practical matters. The necessity, I think, of having a network is obvious for everybody. The newsletter type of network is possibly now a little outdated when the electronic network has become something common. But possibly something like a newsletter could be useful for some time to come yet, and I wonder whether this should not be considered also. Whenever a network is being organized, it is obvious that there has to be some institutional basis to organize it and to keep it running. And so I hope that ADRI will be willing to act in this capacity for some time to come. The question, of course, is also also is to be asked of whether future conferences should be organized and on which topics. I feel that probably if a network does function for some years, then one of its natural outcomes should be the organization of another meeting. But of course, suggestions, I suppose, will be offered about this. But in any case, this is my personal wish.
Thank you. Professor Guajima?
माफ कीजिए, अंग्रेजी मेरा मातृभाषा नहीं है। द्वितीय महायुद्ध के बाद 12 साल के लिए अंग्रेजी सीखने के बावजूद मेरा अंग्रेजी में बोलने का अभी सीमित है, लेकिन आज प्रयत्न करूँगा। I'd like to thank ADRI and staff for arranging such a fruitful conference. The cold wave that covered Patna in these days seems to have been neutralized by the heated discussion. On this occasion, I'd like to request one thing. There are many useful writings in Hindi, not to say of Sahajanand Mera Jiva Sanghars and Rafu Jivan Yatra. There are also some contemporary and controversial books like Bihar Bharat Ka Garbao, Bihar Badhara, Bihar Mein Rajniti Ka Apradhikaram. I sincerely request Indian scholars to explore more Hindi and other Bihari language sources, and I hope that after some years, research works written in Hindi and in this field, Bihar studies will be given due appreciation. My name is धीरे धीरे छाड़ने वाला थी, तो इसलिए भविष्य में जल्दी से काम करने वालों के लिए भी हमारे जैसे भविष्य धीरे धीरे काम करने वालों के लिए भी बिहार शरीर में गुंजाइश होना चाहिए।
I just inform this audience that the Osaka University of Foreign Studies has probably the world's richest collection of Hindi books and journals, and it is an invaluable source of material, especially of course of Bihar studies. Professor Guajima, in addition to being professor, was also the chief librarian for Bihar, so he has particularly contributed to that archive. I would now request Dr. Vinita Damodaran, who has worked on both Bihar and Jharkhand.
I'll say a very few words about a subject very close to my heart. I'd like to put very centrally on the research agenda environmental studies in Bihar, for I feel there's a great paucity of work on this area, and I would particularly like to emphasize, for example, environmental history, which is a kind of burgeoning field elsewhere. And what I mean by environmental history is a relationship between people and the environment over time, which specifically deals with the non-arable environment. We have, for example, lots of studies on the agrarian scene, but very little in the context of Bihar on the non-arable environment, and here I mean forest resources, water resources, and so on. We need to encourage studies on common property resources, landscape studies, forest histories. This is of particular interest to the Jharkhand area, not just to the Jharkhand, but I would emphasize to the Jharkhand area, where the biggest sal forests of South Asia reside, which is an invaluable resource and should be studied not just for biodiversity reasons, but in terms of the relationships that people have with the local environment. Or, you know, I quite firmly believe that nature is not out there, it's very much a lived relationship for people. And we just heard some very disturbing statistics in the context of Jharkhand yesterday that about several thousand acres of hectares of forest land are being cut down, and this is a great tragedy. But just looking at the history of these areas would be very, very important. And I would like to put this centrally on the research agenda, and I'd like to emphasize that. I also like the fact that this conference, and I enjoyed it particularly because this conference gave us the opportunity and helped promote interdisciplinarity in the field of Bihar studies. For example, economists, political scientists, anthropologists, and historians came together in a very creative way, and I think this was a very, very creative interchange of ideas, and I would like to see more of it. I'd just like to end with a plea that what I've noticed in the last 10 years that I've been visiting Bihar is that a lot of our data in terms of Bihar's rich archives, which are both the colonial archives and the immediately post-independence archives, and are in a very serious state of neglect. And we will not be able to study these important questions that we have raised here if these archives fall completely, are neglected to such an extent. And I make a real plea, and I hope that the press records this, that these archives need to be restored. There should be some measure of improving the kind of the security of the kind of valuable data that we have in the Bihar State Archives, and not just at the level of the state, but also district records, for example, which are falling into serious disrepair. I'd just like to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you particularly for putting this issue of the archives center stage, because many scholars we have, and the archives in Bihar have been home to many scholars for many years, and they have produced excellent work like the when you were working in Kenya, now you are working personally in Sussex, but never, but the issue of the archives, the access to the archives is a very important issue, and the state of the archives, I'm sorry to say, is not as good as it should be. In fact, it would not be unfair to say that in spite of the effort of the archivists, the archives in Bihar are disaster zones at the moment. And if nothing is done quickly enough, then that will be one extremely valuable resource which will be lost. But there are resources other than the archives also. Field work, of course, is one of them. And I would now ask Dr. Professor Nirmal Singh Gupta, who uses fieldwork as a resource of research, to come and reflect it.
We came here, apart from many other things, and I think you will also join us. We come from the same group, that and some of the people are not here. One of the great enthusiasm for us was that the senior scholars that we used to see are some of the most competent scholars in the country and in the world. We have two of them within us today. Walter is there, and Professor Sharma has already joined. But this is one of the great qualities of almost all the scholars why Bihar is important, that most of them are very thorough and very rigorous in their methodology. And we didn't spare one another on this issue. I think we will also joke on this. Then we started admiring each other. I am really happy that my works impressed Walter so much. I can also tell you that when I went through Bella's works last night, she told me if I can give my comments. I found the proposal is so rigorous, and I am so novice in the specific field she is proposing that I won't be able to satisfy. I will have to wait for the research to come. And this is more or less true for most of the scholars who have passed. And first request to ADRI will be that you retain the very high standard of research, the rigorousness of research on matters in Bihar. And we had a tremendous atmosphere here for that kind of thing. Second is that all the topics are important. When the request came to me from city and that we are also working apart from meeting each other to develop a research agenda. I thought that what are the kinds of topics I would like to say. So I thought two types of topics, and finally I choose one on which I have written a note, out of which I could present only one part, thinking that unless I can produce the rigorous results, there will be a hostile atmosphere. So my request to you will be that, adding to Vanita's suggestion, I am giving you a set of concrete areas where I have some very elementary work. The 4-5 areas like the flood of North, which is less known, on the anti-dam kind of thing. But this part, since there is a note, I will pursue, but I will request that look into that thing. The other thing that I did not write, and when I came here I was a little shocked to find that there is none of my known research scholars in the cultural academic field. But then Catherine, I never knew her. But then suddenly in the morning, Catherine comes out with, she is not here unfortunately, on one of the most important topics of Bihar, which I don't think I will ever understand Bihari character without that topic, the culture of it. See, there are, all the people have their cultures, but this is one area where the area can never be understood without a culture. I am a Bengali. My first introduction to Bihari was that in the evening in the industrial area, everyone will sit for sun. This does not happen to any other community in Calcutta who come for migration. Later also when you go here, you will find that each evenings are spread on this kind of thing. When it happened in Jharkhand, that language becomes an issue, and it was just unbelievable that a politics can be based on language. And I can tell you that I edited a book on which no publisher refused to publish the book, saying that you have incorporated a chapter on language. Now you drop it, then it becomes political economy. I said no, the Jharkhand movement cannot be understood without language. And that is true, that none of these areas can be understood without language and culture. I don't know how to do a research on this area, but this will be my request, and we have shared a lot of thoughts on this with our team, that although it is a very new area and difficult area, please pursue this.
Thank you very much. We've also mentioned on the very first day of the conference. I would request him to come and speak to us a little bit.
I am not here for really putting up this agenda, but there are certain points which I would like to say. I feel that Bihar is not well researched in terms of certain aspects, like in terms of the capital accumulation aspect. In fact, the research agenda depends upon what kind of a perspective we do have. And within classical economic perspective, I would suggest that there should be a primacy to the sphere of production. And in this, how could we understand the class institutions? How could we understand the communal issues? What are the different processes that destroy or deform our whole capital, the capital accumulation process in this state? How is it that this process has been degenerated into the caste war, and how is it that the corruption has become such an important issue? These are the points I refer to in my paper as well. I would like that these issues can be pursued.
Thank you. And it was our responsibility that we held a conference a little away from Patna, and as a result, many scholars and other interested people who would have liked to attend the conference intensively could not do so. Nevertheless, we had some of you coming there, taking the trouble of coming there and adding to the discussions. In any case, with a few of the people present here, we've had long discussions even otherwise on what ought to be the research agenda for Bihar. After all, research is ultimately an individual activity, and research choices will be made at an individual level. But nevertheless, we've had some conversations about what are the possible areas which could be researched, what are the lacunae that we can identify, etc., etc. And one of those people who has contributed greatly to the development of ideas about the research agenda has been Professor Vinay Kant. I would request him now to please talk to us. Vinay.
Mr. Chairman and friends, I must express my apologies for not remaining present in the sessions of this important conference. That's why I am not very familiar with what transpired in the discussions of the presentation of papers on the 4 days of the conference. So my comments would be obviously sometimes a little repetitive in nature and maybe outside the focus of the conference. But in the first place, I would like to state, I may be incorrect, that there was no clear focus around which this conference was being organized. It has its own advantage. When you initiate a thing, maybe some kind of studying fragments is of great use. But it has to be made more focused and coherent as it is taken further. And I hope that ADRI will do something about it and will have a more focused agenda about what ought to be studied in the specific case of Bihar. I think it is important to begin with the premise that a research agenda has to be decided on the basis of a certain perspective, but perspective in a different sense. Where do you stand? And what is the purpose of the research agenda? What do you want out of the research agenda? Because one way to look at the entire research agenda could be as concerned people of the state. And there could be another way of looking at the research agenda as a dispassionate, objective observer from outside. Myself being located in the milieu here, obviously I would be opting for the former rather than the latter. In Bihar, as you would have noticed possibly, academics and activism usually flow into one another. And quite often, academics or scholars end up as activists and even vice versa. That is possibly one of the strengths of academic work in the state. And we can possibly build up from that strength. And academicians, or for that matter others who may not be exactly academicians, they may be men from newspapers, they may be men from, you can say, social activism or elsewhere. They will have to think of a research agenda primarily in the context of the special expectations of the state at the present juncture of crisis or whatever you call it. We are situated at a point where there is a crisis-like situation according to many of us. First, there are points of hope as well. But we shall have to delineate those, or identify those points of hope wherever they may be. And we shall have to go a little deeper into the malaise, into the problems that we face in many areas. A number of areas have been mentioned. I was listening to some of the earlier comments being made by those who were present throughout the conference possibly. And there are many sensible areas which were being mentioned. And I agree with most of them. But there are areas which seem to be left out. For example, there seems to be some kind of an institutional collapse in this state. And that institutional collapse will have to be studied from various angles. Of course, political economy would also be relevant, and the distinctive political economy of this state. Culture is a very, very important point. Many people have mentioned it, and Nirmal just now mentioned about the language thing, but it's really very important. Just the other day, we were holding another seminar just before the ADRI seminar. There was a 2-day seminar which was organized on Hindi. Construction of Hindi. There is another research center. There is a sister research organization, you can see, in the town, east and west. And there we were talking about the construction of language. In the particular context of Bihar also, there is a certain kind of exclusion of certain types of linguistic possibilities which were dwelt at length by many of the researchers who are working in the field of language. That is one example. So cultural dimensions are also there, language and other cultural dimensions. But how they have all contributed to the building up of the crisis that we face today in the state of Bihar in terms of institutions, as also in terms of the underdevelopment syndrome of the state, will have to be studied at length. What I mean to emphasize is the distinctive deprivation of the state. What are the features of those distinctive deprivations? And why they are as they are, that has to be studied. And that has to be kept at focus. Only then possibly a meaningful agenda can be set for the researchers, which may be more useful for the people of the state who need it badly at this point of time. Thank you.
Thank you. On to the best of our ability with as much seriousness as we can summon. Some of those things are institutional, which can be done by institutions, among which ADRI is one of the institutions among many which will be doing these things. For instance, setting up or expanding the network which already exists, formalizing it slightly, linking it up with other networks and so on. Much of this has become now quite easy because of the electronic revolution, which email and websites are quite easily available. And there are excellent Bihar bibliography on the web, which is available in America, and I'm sure that it is possible for us to contribute a little bit and for Osaka to contribute a little bit and build up an extremely elaborate and rich website on Bihar. So those things we will be doing. As I said right in the beginning, research is research agendas are individual, and research methodologies, research biases, research priorities are individual. Professor Vilayakant has pointed out the need to take up research of both types, that which is of relevance to the people of Bihar, of course, but also that which satisfies the researchers and satisfies the intellectual urge and keeps up the quality of research in itself. We hope that it will be possible to intensify the process which is already been on in these respects. I personally have found the seminar to be extremely interesting, in spite of the fact that I must say that I have had many disappointments. As one of the organizers of the seminar, it has taken more than 2 years to organize. the ways in which we had conceived of the seminar had not been possible to implement. We had thought that the seminar, first of all, should have had much greater participation of younger scholars. We've had some young scholars, but we had thought that there would be many who would be in the beginning of their research phase, MPhil or PhD work, who should be participating in the seminar, perhaps not necessarily presenting their research because they won't have done very substantial research up now, but perhaps as observers and so on. Many years ago, we had organized a similar conference in Gujarat, which is called the Gujarat Conference, from which, in fact, the idea of holding the Bihar Conference was derived. And the Gujarat Conference had a large number of young researchers as observers. And there was some effect of their attending the conference on the quality of their own research later. In this case, it has not been possible to attract so many of them for various personal reasons or other preoccupations. Many of them who had agreed to come and who could have come couldn't ultimately make it at the end. There are many other scholars whom we had invited from different parts of the world could not come, and different parts of India. Some sent us letters of regret almost at the last minute. Some are still trying to come. It is a long time of the year to travel to India. So it's never the wrong time of the year to travel to Bihar. But it is very difficult for people to get tickets to India, it seems, in this era of globalization, liberalization. And even business class tickets are very difficult to get, particularly business class tickets. So we've been deprived of the company of some very good researchers who we had to look forward to. We'd also thought of carrying out the seminar in 2 or 3 phases. And this particular international seminar in December was supposed to have been the last of the 3-phase seminar. The first was a series of small conferences, perhaps not necessarily held in Patna but elsewhere, other districts, other smaller towns, of researchers working on various themes in Bihar itself. The second would have been of people who use the archives, Patna archives, who use the statistics, statistics of Bihar to work on Bihar as a macro situation. And finally, there would have been this international conference which would have been boundary-less between disciplines as well as boundary-less in terms of the past, present and future. As it happened, we reached the last one first, but that does not prevent us from doing the other two in the future, reversing the order as it were. And we still hope over the next year and a half to be able to do the other 2 seminars, other 2 types of seminars in Patna and elsewhere in Bihar as a continuing process of what I can only describe visually as cooperative research. Because again, as I said, research is carried out by individuals, but there is always a possibility of researchers sharing ideas and initiatives with each other. And that's what I would call roughly cooperative research. So it is possible to start that process. And we also look at this process of cooperative research as one of the ingredients into cultural renaissance of Bihar. Cultural renaissance has not happened in Bihar. One of the facts which distinguishes Bihar from other parts of the country, especially Bengal. And whenever we talk of culture in Bihar, we talk of the classical, the antique, the archaic, the museum piece, the thing which is dying, the thing which needs to be preserved. And yet there is a very vigorous culture which exists, not only in terms of arts and crafts, but also in terms of ideas. And some of that has been presented in non-academic fashions through films, for instance, made by very creative Bihari filmmakers, through photographs. I believe there's an excellent photographic exhibition taking place even now in the Institute. And from tomorrow onwards, there's a moving photographic exhibition which is going to take place in different parts of the country, the city for the next 6 days. So these are forms which have been used, and there are many other forms which people have been using in order to express ideas. Now, one of the forms which we thought would contribute to the cultural renaissance would be in terms of research, academic research. This is what we are most familiar with, perhaps not very good at, but this is one area which, since we are familiar with, we would like to contribute through this. One of the things in doing this would be to do anonymous research, which would be setting up databases, setting up bibliographies, for which you don't get credit as individuals. But these are things which institutions like ADRI are equipped to do and should be doing. And therefore we are committed to do this. Our resources are limited, but with the limited resources, we do not intend to make compromises on quality. And we certainly do not want to produce shoddy products. We want to produce good products. And by good products, I mean good products which are good in terms of content, good in terms of design, good in terms of presentation, good in terms of layout, good in terms of overall quality. So this is an idea which ADRI has had right from the beginning, and we would like to carry on with this over the period that we foresee. Finally, it is organizing any such event is a tremendous cooperative exercise, and where the participants cooperate, of course, but behind the participants are a huge number of people who from getting the idea to getting the money to getting the room to getting chairs, tables, pencils, pens, erasers, microphones, and so on. And in this respect, ADRI is a doubly blessed institution. It has people who work enormously hard and enormously selflessly without ever complaining or failing. And I will fail my duties if I do not thank all my colleagues in ADRI who have contributed tremendously and who will of course have to continue working hard even after we've gone from Patna because we are making commitments on their behalf. And I would once again thank them very deeply, very sincerely for the enormous effort that all of them have put in. I would request you to join me in accepting my appreciation. At the very end, I must say that all the seminars also leave you with a immense sense of humility, because they reveal how much you don't know. I mean, every day is a lesson in that, but particularly when you are among scholars, among scientists who have gathered together, then you realize how little you know, and you realize how little you know vis-a-vis those who have preceded you on the path, who have achieved so much, and vis-a-vis those who are following you and catching up with you and are about to overtake you in terms of their knowledge and experience and insights that they are gathering. We've had experience. We have had the benefit of both sets of people being present in this conference. I'm going to invite over the next two such people to talk to us. One briefly and one I hope in a little more depth and a little more length. First, Vila Bhatia.
From here, this on behalf of the participants.
It's not you are inviting, actually you are asking for something that
organizing this conference and bringing this all together. Thank you very much, and we all hope that when we go back to from wherever we all have come, we will continue our commitment to Bihar and the people of Bihar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mira. As I was saying, there is also a great deal of humility which comes at the end of such occasions when one sees scholars who, without the access to the resources and to the technologies that we have today, achieved so much and got so many more insights than we have been able to have. One of the greatest scholars on the earth is Professor R. Shapan, right here. He has worked with the most traditional methods of learning and knowledge and achieved the most radical results at the end. I request Professor R. Shapan to come and give us the benefit of his opinion in a valedictory address. before I ask Dr. Sharma to speak, Professor P.P. Ghosh, Dr. P.P. Ghosh will read out a very brief report on the seminar. It's obviously sketchy and incomplete because 3 days of intensive, 4 days of intensive discussions cannot be summarized in just a few paragraphs, but he has done so. And give some idea to the people here who were not present through the seminar of what he managed to achieve.
Professor Sharma, our distinguished chief guest in this military session, and thus our chairman, Shehbaz, Katimka, and friends. I do have a write-up, but I think I will not read it because when I was going to this session, I was thinking about what is the essence of this write-up, a short synopsis I have prepared. I'll just take a couple of minutes to explain. We have about 2 dozen papers in this conference. The participants were given a short write-up about the objective of the conference, but at the same time, they were also told that respecting their own research tradition, conclusions, is more important than sticking to the framework that has been provided. So everyone made use of that liberty. And the result of that exercise of liberty is very interesting. I was just making a classification of the papers that we have got, what kind of classification comes out of it. I think of the 2 dozen papers, around six, I'm not making any one of the classification very difficult, is on the aspect of protest and movement in Bihar. I think if you see the current status of society, politics and culture, other dimensions, by any standard, even if you do not go to research papers, that dimension of our society is the most visible one. That is the most visible one. In fact, I remember with a journalist friend of mine telling me very casually that at any point of time, there are at least 300 movements going on in different parts of Bihar. Whatever might be the topic. So that is the statement that he made. And that's also reflected here. Of the 2 dozen papers, more than 25% is around the concept of protest, mostly in the agrarian sector, and partly in the tribal context. The second group that emerged, again in terms of numbers, excuse my love for numbers, is the topic of environment. We had about 3 papers on that. Both the socio-political implications of environmental question, as well as 2 very good discourses on socio-technical implications of environmental questions. And in the context of Bihar, I think this group has emerged the second most important group, because many other things, even if you commit the mistake now, it can probably be corrected later. But not in the field of environment. Not in the field of environment, if you commit a mistake now, the effect thereof remains for us, I do not know for how many times. So that is the second reason I think there are at least 3 very good papers on the question of environment in Bihar. The third was a number of people discussed in papers as well as in other contexts, is the question of Bihari image and Bihari identity. This, as many of the speakers discussed, question of image, question of identity, question of culture, is one of the least researched topics now. One of the least researched topics now. Although, in a informal gathering, as far as I can see, discussions that I had in and around Patna or in Delhi, wherever there is a typical Bihari gathering, this question is discussed. And that was also reflected in seminar. That question of image, question of identity, question of culture, not a researched one, but people have started asking the question, and started feeding absence of information, absence of organized data, organized analysis on this third question. Fourth question that came up was economics. Surprisingly, I think we are negating the Marxian wisdom that it is the economics that determines everything else in the society. Probably not. We are less bothered about economics at this point of time. Not that we have ceased to become poor. We are still poor. But other dimensions of the society has posed so much problem before us. At this point of time, probably we are thinking that, well, a little of less production, a little of less surplus, a little of less investment, a little of less innovation will not matter so much as Vinay was saying, loss of institution, as many other people are saying, the collapse of the political system, and so on and so on. So economics, of course, I think I already mentioned towards the beginning that if you see Bihar's rural economy, it is far, far better than the rural Bihar's politics. We have the same data that I told you for the last 6-7 years. It has been growing at a rate higher than the population growth rate, which is a very fundamental condition for any kind of agrarian change. Maybe that is reflected, but poverty is not removed. Once people are paid less attention to economics, that doesn't mean that poverty is not removed. But somehow we have landed ourselves in a situation, where other problems than breaking is a work worry than the question of breaking. And then of course we had a couple of papers which is not in this classification. I think that talked about the good problem. Of course, one paper was in this one. Maybe that is. But this is roughly the order that comes out from a sample, which is not random, but which is not guided by. There is no guide from us who is supposed to write on what. There are no separate classifications. I feel completely satisfied with this classification. This is the kind of problem. The protest is the first one, which is the sort of agony that we are going through, either in the field of economics or the field of sociology or in the field of arts. That more or less gives in a gist what we have been doing for the last 3 to 4 days. We do have a write-up on what was being discussed. For those who had missed the sessions can make use of this. They have a request to me for supply of papers, as usually happens no matter how many papers you Xerox. You are bound to it has happened, but I promise all those who make request, I will get them Xerox again and send the full set to all the interest participants. With these words, I'll ask Professor Shah.
I'm thankful to the organizers of this conference for having given me this opportunity of sharing some of my views with you. I don't know why they approached me, because I deal with problems of ancient history. I'm not very much concerned with problems of modern times. It looks as if they didn't have anybody else available, so they approached me. And I'm happy to come to my friends, because most of these people sitting here, they are my old friends. The question of Bihar in the world and world in Bihar, it's a very interesting question. In the field of history and archaeology, we are having a debate whether indigenous factors are responsible for progress and development, or whether universal factors, world factors are responsible for progress or development. In India, it's the day for indigenous factors, so that we have a good number of fundamentalists in the country believe that everything originated in India, all the best elements of culture, and from India it is spread all over the world. So that kind of debate is going. I don't know whether you took the same position here, whether everything of the best elements of culture originated in Bihar, and from here it is spread all over the world. But one of my friends sitting here is working on migration. But we, the people who believe in this theory, processual theory or indigenous theory, they don't believe in migration. Nobody came to India from outside. Whatever happened in India, Indians did it on their own. In any case, it's for you to carry on this debate further and to find out the nature of interaction between local factors on the one hand and outside factors on the other. Of course, Bihar is condemned by everybody because of lack of progress. But as far as I can see, we have made some progress in the last 50, 60 years. I will refer to my own district, Begusarai, about which Saiwal was speaking yesterday. When I entered BP High School in Begusarai in 1933, 65 years ago, the whole district had only one school, just one school, Barndev Prasad High English School, secondary school. Now this district has, I am told, more than 100 high schools. And it has more than 30 colleges which teach students up to BA. The rate of literacy when I was a student was about 4%. Now the rate of literacy in Begusarai is 38%. I will not talk of industrialization about which Saiwal talked yesterday. But I do think perhaps that we have a kind of green revolution in Begusarai at the moment. Village, land in my village, we used to produce, the average produce used to be 3 or 4 mounds per acre. That was the average. Now it's 40 mounds per acre. So things are changing, it's not as if nothing has changed. But then when you do this kind of a stock taking, you have also many weak spots. And Begusarai can also claim that it has some of the famous criminals in Bihar. We have also made progress in that side. After all, you can't get rid of social, economic and political contradictions. So that when you do this kind of a stock taking, you have to always bear in mind contradictions which are going on in society. Talking of Bihar as a whole, when we talk that we are not making much of progress, I would advise you to examine the social background of the leadership and activists who conducted our freedom, that the nature of leadership in Bihar and the nature of the social activists in Bihar who took part in freedom struggle was perhaps much different from that of Bengal. For example, I would pose the problem, I would like to say that all the leaders of freedom struggle that we had in Bihar, this is all based impressionistic on my personal knowledge. I haven't read any books. I haven't consulted the archives. All these were either, they came from middle ranging zamindar families, or they were sons of the managers of zamindars, or they were the sons of the employees of zamindars. You examine the case of all the leaders. You examine the case of Rajendra Prasad, you examine the case of Shri Krishna Singh, you examine the case of Anugrah Narayan Singh, Bipin Bihari Verma, Satyanarayan Singh, anybody you take up. You examine it very carefully and will find out that each one of them is either a middle-ranking zamindar or is the son of the manager or the employee of a zamindar. It's quite interesting because after all the zamindars, they have nothing to do, they won't deal directly with the sub-divisional magistrates or district magistrates. Their managers or their agents, they will deal directly. Now these people, they naturally realize the importance of English education, Western education. They got themselves educated, their sons educated, but the zamindars, they continue to be as uneducated as ever. So you have this, a different kind of leadership. If you look at the type of leaders that Bengal produced, most of the leaders who took part in the freedom struggle, they were the sons of professionals, sons of lawyers, etc., etc. More or less, low people. And that creates a kind of fundamental difference. That creates a kind of mentality, so that when you talk of this bourgeois influence in the freedom, undermines our thirst for knowledge, research for knowledge, and so on. And it also promotes a kind of fatalism. This fatalism is not necessarily connected with this national movement, but this is a point which I would like to stress. Belief in fatalism is very important, because this is ingrained in my mind also, because when I used to get up early in the morning in a village at 4 or 5 to study, I used to hear a song in my village. कर्म के गति न्यारी ओ उधोजी काहे कोयलिया काहे कोयल कार बरन भय, like that. Why is it that this crow, this quail, this becomes black and the duck that becomes white? काहे मूर्खा राज करत है, काहे पंडिता भिखारी. Which applies to this situation. Why? Because karma ke gati nyari. Why is it that the illiterates, they are ruling over us? And why is it that all these people who call themselves the scholars, they are beggars? What? Is it because of our justice? This is because this is destined to be. So this is our strong belief in destiny. That point, the idea of punarjan, the idea of rebirth, all this is very strongly ingrained in our mind. All these things have to be understood carefully, otherwise you will not be able to explain many of these things. And if you have such a situation in this kind of ideology, this force becomes very important. in this kind of mentality, the force, the physical force, it enjoys utmost importance. You know this. That's why I would suggest, if you want to carry on some research, that this was hinted at by Dr. Vinay Kant, you have to sort of learn not only Hindi, but you have to learn various dialects of Bihar. That becomes very important. You know, when I used to speak Hindi, in my childhood, in my village, people would taunt me, why do you speak English? You talk in your own language. Hindi used to be called English. I mean, this talk, if I don't speak in my village dialect, if I speak in Hindi, then people in my village will taunt me, why do you speak in English? Why don't you speak your language? So that's why it's necessary, if you want to really have some idea of the feel of this mentality, the working of the mentality, you have to learn the dialect. It's not only sufficient that you learn this language, Hindi language, but you learn the dialect. For example, Zar, Joru, Zameen, Jorka. Zar means capital or sona, property. Joru, wife. Zameen, land. Jor, force. Zar, Joru, Zameen, Jor ka, nahi to koi all ka. I mean, if you possess physical force, if you have physical power, then you can control your wife, you can control your property, you can control sort of your land, otherwise it belongs to somebody else. So, this is the type of this Tilakshi Uski Bhand. This kind of mentality has, that's why you know physical force is so much important here. So all these things they should receive some attention. And if you have this kind of further, if you are talking about the physiology, people of this type, they give more attention to land and very little to technology or to trade. The other day, Saval was talking of this trade and technology and so on. You know, in our younger days, I mean in my childhood, this engineering and medicine, they were not at all preferred. Nobody was willing to be an engineer. Nobody was willing to be a doctor. And parents wouldn't allow you to go in for engineering. They wouldn't allow you to go in for medicine and so on. Why? Because in these professions you have to use head. And manual labor is always, people hate manual labor. People belonging to upper classes, upper groups, upper castes. So the dignity of labor is never recognized in this kind of ideology. That's why it's important that you try to find out the sort of movements which we had here and what are its implications for the future development of Bihar. I would also like to say a few words about peasant movement. You know, you have this great mass awakening for social justice all over Bihar. But how do you have this awakening? Social justice in Bihar. My view is that this is because of freedom struggle and more importantly because of the Kisan movement. had there been no Kisan movement, peasant movement in Bihar, there would have been no evolution of Zamindari. And if there would have been no evolution of Zamindari in 1950, under the pressure of Kisan movement, then all these intermediate castes, they wouldn't have arisen in the manner that they have arisen today. All these intermediate castes, they were the tenants of the upper caste. And once the permanent settlement Zamindari was abolished in 1950, then the yoke to which they were harnessed, that yoke was removed. So then they felt free. Another 20-25 years, then they sort of assert. This might interest all of you because in Bihar, caste-wise breakup is like this. First I will take my own caste because they believe in casteism. Brahman or Bhumihar, out of 10,000 Bhumihars, 78 Bhumihars knew English in 1931. This is all about Bihar. Brahman, out of 10,000 Brahmins, 197 Brahmins, they knew English. Just more than double than that of Bhumihar. That's why Sahajanand started that movement that the Bhavans should be also Brahmins. You know why I'm a Sharma? I'm not a Sharma, I'm a Singh. Why was I Sharma? Because I was born in 1920. At that time there was a strong Bhumihar movement. And according to the Dharma Shastra, a Brahman should be called Sharman or Sharma, which means auspicious. A Kshatriya should be called Varma, which means protection, cover. A Vash should be called Gupta because he protects, conserves and hides his wealth. And a Shudra should be called Das because he serves everyone. It was because of this that all these castes they claim to be Burma. You know, these are Shudras. According to the judgment of this Calcutta High Court, they are Shudras, Allahabad calls them Kshatriyas. Anyway, not but if you are a Burma, then you become a Kshatriya. That's okay. So the point I am trying to, anyway, the point I am trying to place before you is this uneven distribution of education. Now the castes, out of 10,000 castes, 1,000 castes knew English. Even though they were Sudras, and that is why they have been dominating Patna Secretariat. All this is interesting, you try to find out. Out of 10,000 Rajputs, 84 Rajputs knew English. Out of 10,000 Kurmis, 20 Kurmis knew English. Out of 10,000 Telis, 17 Telis knew English. Out of 10,000 Chamars, 2 Chamars knew English. One was the Vimanara. Out of 10,000 Gwalas, which means Yadavas, 8 Gwalas knew English. Only 8. And they can't wait. Out of 10,000 domes, 1 dome knew English. Out of 10,000 dusars, 2 dusars knew English. I'm sorry I have forgotten the number about the Muslims, but the number of the Muslims was quite high. Pakistan is interested in Muslims. There is a strong view that the Muslims they didn't receive the benefit of English education. But so far as Bihar is concerned, Muslims came forward to receive the benefits of English education. In the 19th century, I remember, in 1884, there was a weather and decided the area was the one to make the area of first. Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to make much impact. If you choose a particular area and really make real contribution in that area, it will be not only of purely academic relevance, but it will be of great relevance to social policy, economic policy, etc., etc.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. It's been a great honor for us that you gave us this valedictory address. We see ourselves as principally an academic and a professional organization. And it was with great degree of deliberation that we decided, right when we were planning this seminar 2 years ago, that we would have this seminar inaugurated by and concluded by academics, and that we would not invite politicians or not invite other people to the seminar in that respect. Hence, we are very happy that the seminar was flagged off by Professor Satyanand, and now the ending whistle is being blown by Mr. R.A. Sharma, and it has been of great satisfaction to us. We have, however, an idea that we will invite civil servants, engineers, doctors, lawyers, jurists, other professionals who have knowledge of various aspects of the social and ecological and political realities of Bihar to contribute to our discussions and our researches in the future. You are quite right that we will, as an institution, we have to decide our own research first and focus on those areas. We can't obviously do all these things ourselves, and we don't even intend to. But as a point where many researchers can meet in the future, we will be happy to be one of the little cogs in a big wheel which constitutes learning Bihar. I would now request Katinka Sinha Karkov to put a vote of thanks.
Really reason to thank people, and before that I really hope that everybody will do what I have expected or they will do. So actually, of course, I have some regrets also. First of all, there are what Dr. Arvintas already said, there are indeed many people who have not been able to come, and I really regret that. And during the seminar itself, there were many new names given to me who I should have invited and I haven't invited. So I regret that, but at the same time, I think it's just impossible to invite each and everybody. And I think I'm very grateful because I feel that this is not the end, this is just the beginning, and then we had in mind actually. We had in mind also 3 phases that didn't work out, but we had certainly had in mind to have another conference later on. So I think the next conference should be the second phase or the first phase, and it might be taking place in Rheinchi. And I say this particular because the main the main regret of people in South Bihar or Jharkhand, how it is called now, are not available. Many people are not here. Actually, almost. I mean, if I'm Jharkhandi, I'm one of the few people who is represented here. But I think that is really to be regretted, and I think it should be explained also. It's one of the, actually, I think it was very much discussed in the panel, but the people who are actually representing that area have not been able, and some even didn't want to come. So I think that is a very important thing to remember and to be kept in mind for future conferences. So I first of all like, of course, to thank Professor Arnes Sharma. I really think it was a wonderful conclusion of this seminar. I thank you very much. Then, of course, I thank all the outstation people, outstation outside Patna, that are the outsiders, bhikkhus this time. The outstations, many have left already, but some are still here. I thank them very much. I thank everybody who is local from Patna, who we really needed for this conference. I am very happy finally some have been able to make it. I like to express my thanks, of course, to the press and the media and to Darshan, without whom this conference would certainly not have been successful, and certainly what already Professor Waterhouse was mentioning, it would not have been available in documents which could have been kept for later on. So it's very important they were here. Thank you very much. I like to thank the sponsors, the ESF, European Science Foundation, the State Bank of India, the Bank of India, and of course the authorities from Volmi and Moria. And I think it finally was a good idea to have the last day in Moria. I like, of course, to thank people from APCA. I especially would like to thank the Brenda, I think. Brenda, who has made the brochure and the new brochure of ADRI. Everybody has it, I think everybody has got it. If you don't have it, please ask Sunita Lal of ADRI. I think it's a wonderful brochure, and I'm very grateful to it, and I certainly hope to get more of it. And then finally, I would very much like to thank all my colleagues in ADRI. I'm extremely impressed, and I'm now very much convinced that this could not have been held in Ranchi. It could also happen in Patna, and I think it was wonderful. Everybody in ADRI, not only during these 4 days, but since the last couple of months, what they have done. Thank you very much. And last but not least, I'd like to thank Arvind. And I think that without him, this conference certainly would not have taken place. It was just a matter of fact. And I have not only I would like to thank for the contribution, but I think personally I have learned a lot from Arvind how to organize his conferences and how not to organize his conferences. Thank you.
As many participants suggested, culture should be an integral part of our
See available now for everybody.